So welcome, Desiree. I'm very happy to have you here and looking forward to your presentation.
Great. Thanks for the warm welcome, Hannah. So a little bit more about me. As you mentioned, I did join about the same time as Matthias did. We were a bit buddies, came in at a growing kind of team that was just myself and my engineering manager. We've grown the tribe across 2 offices. The team is predominantly in Madrid, with myself and a few other people based here in Munich. Fun fact, I'm a Canadian, I'm a coffee lover and a craft beer enthusiast, which probably means I'm not very formal, but I'm managing in Germany okay. And I'm really looking forward to sharing what the team's been working on. And the best way to do that, of course, is to actually demo that with you. So before we jump right into the demo, I do want to introduce the characters that we're going to be talking about today. This is Mark. Mark is the head of sales, and he has 2 direct reports. So he has Larissa and he has Allison. They're both sales managers, different seniority levels. And as Hannah mentioned, we did try to make this experience as flexible as possible for different kinds of organizations, for different kinds of ways to do performance management, as well as employee development. So for each of these employees, I'm going to walk through a slightly different process to highlight the flexibility of the platform, the different kinds of things that you can do. And this will be predominantly from the manager and the employee perspective. It doesn't mean that we've forgotten about HR. I know that the majority of folks on the call today are obviously from HR, but the pieces that are very HR focused are things that we're going to be touching on in the coming up next, which I'll touch at the very end of the presentation. So let's take a look at Allison. Just to orientate yourself, this is the Personio employee profile, and in the performance area is a tab here. So Allison has been asked by her supervisor to come in here and do a self-reflection. So before we jump into that, just kind of taking a look at here, we can already tell a few things about Allison. We can see that she's on a performance improvement plan, that there are some goals that are attached to this, that it doesn't look like they're doing amazing there. And we also see that she's doing regular one-on-ones with Mark. And if she was going to come in here and do a self-reflection, there's lots of flexibility. All different kinds of forms can live here. But she can select her self-reflection here and then fill this in using any number of different kinds of fields. So we have things like scale type questions. We have open text type questions. This can completely be customized to whatever your company needs. As well as even simple binary questions like do you need trainings that are associated with this self-reflection, or you feel like you need. And then publishing this feedback. And as soon as this is published, it's added to the list of the published. This kind of ends up turning into a timeline of different things that have happened over the life cycle of Allison at the company. And as soon as this is sent, actually Mark is now going to get an email. And he's going to be informed that this has happened, and so that he can immediately start taking action. So the danger of the demo is it always takes a few minutes to pass between different folks. But I'll log out of Allison here and I'll log in as Mark. So Mark's coming to Personio. He now needs to complete his side of the review, which is the manager review. One quick moment. Pop over to Allison's profile. And now we're looking at it from the eyes of her supervisor. Now, there are a few things to notice here, that there is this additional widget that's available for performance notes. And this is where we can see that Mark's been capturing a few things, that Allison's been showing up late, that she's not hitting her sales targets. But the important thing to note is this is never visible to the employee. So this can be a space that Mark can go in, fill in information based on things that he observes over time. So when it comes down to filling in this manager self-reflection or this manager review, he can go in, he can then start his, and then fill out all of the information. So maybe he needs to come back to this a few different times before he's complete, or maybe he doesn't want to share this with Allison until he actually has the meeting. So he has the option to fill in this and then save it for later. What this is going to do is it's going to punt this into this private draft space. And here, now that it's finished, he wants to set up a call with Allison. You can go in, you can schedule a meeting. This is our annual review. We want to set it up for this Friday from 11 to 12. We can even add things like Zoom links in here that you can show up, and then as well as a description. And attach the self-reflection form. So when I hit schedule here, Allison's been able to receive an email with all of this information so that she can prepare and for the manager review. Okay. Et voila. So this is set up, and that's a simple kind of 180, looking at the past. How have you done? Let's talk about it kind of flow. If we're going to go take a look over at Larissa, at a slightly different use case here that we can do. Now let's take it, and now we're looking forward. So we're talking about how Larissa is going to develop, what her goals are for the next quarter, what does she want her career goals essentially to be. Now looking at Larissa, she's at a slightly different perspective. And once again, we're still from Mark's perspective here. If you need to orientate yourself, it's always at the top. And here we can see that she's already done the employee review, the self-reflection. Generally, no performance improvement plans, so everything's looking pretty good. I'm now, as she's a sales rep, I'm going to go into the goals, and I see that for Q1 and Q2, she's doing really outstanding on our goals. She overachieved in Q1. She almost hit her sales target in Q2. She's doing really well. There's also these more development-focused goals here, where it looks like she's about 66% achieved. So as I'm her manager, I want to set up this sales target for Q3, as I'm sure a lot of you teams are also doing this going forward right now. So instead of having to copy all of this information over and create something new, I can just simply duplicate it. Go to Q3. Now this is a Q3 sales target. Similar piece. Duplicate this. And now there's these additional options here that Mark can select. So this is a sales target, and there is potentially ways that this has impact on any kind of bonus structure. So we want to make sure that only Mark's the one updating this. And as there only is one key result here, we don't necessarily need to enable custom rates. But if you had 3 or 4 here, you could say that sales target was 50% of the goal, and split the remaining 50% between all the other different types of goals here. When you submit this, then show up, and we see back here on the goals timeline that for the next quarter, we have this Q3 sales target, which is ready to go. Now, saying in this kind of case, Larissa is largely in charge of her own development. But Mark wants to use this one-on-one to talk to her a little bit more about those kind of topics. So he can go into his already scheduled one-on-one. You can see the feedback form is already associated here. You can go in, you can say, please, for our next meeting, fill out a development plan and set up some goals, and we can talk about it in our next one-on-one. And immediately, Larissa is notified of this, and she knows that this is what she needs to do. Coming into this, Larissa can also log out. This one's a little easier of a transition. So now Larissa can log in and then use any of these other forms to create an employee development plan, to add additional goals, and to prepare for a meeting with Mark. So this gives a pretty good overview of all the different kinds of flexibility. As you can see, this form doesn't have any scales associated with it. It's really flexible to your needs. But the flip side of that is, of course, that sometimes as an HR manager, you want structure. And this gets kind of leads into the segue of the things that we're up under next for development. Quickly pop over here. So the team has been really hard at work moving all of this older part of Personio and then developing this new user experience. But the next piece is completely greenfield, and we're building the set it and forget about it review cycle. And so in the same way that you do a review cycle with a manager and self-review as we did, we want to completely automate this so that you as an HR manager, you can go in, you can customize it to suit whatever forms that you want for this, whichever group of employees. Maybe this is only for the sales team. Maybe this is for everyone, but except if they're in probation, as well as all of these notifications will be extended so you can trigger when a task is required, and to follow up and notifications and nudging managers that need a bit of support, or you can see if someone's been on holiday and hasn't finished. So the idea here is to be able to create an entire performance cycle for HR managers, for everyone else. So it's not just about setting and forgetting about it. The other big piece is actually having overview and insight and providing that level of peace of mind. So the second piece of this is this overview. So that you can know the status of any review at any time, be empowered to take action, follow up, and keep on schedule. The really cool part about this is we will be getting our own spot in the navigation, as you can see in this screenshot. Probably not the finalized icon, but this is the first big step in creating an entire domain for performance and development. In September, we've been one small and mighty team making a lot of changes since I joined over the last year. But now we're going to be actually splitting into two teams in September, and another third team is going to be joining later on. So this is just the beginning. There will be more roadmap items that you can see and expect from the performance and development area in Personio, but those other teams just need to get formed up. And so very excited to share a future roadmap version when we get more people on board. So happy to pause there. And for any questions that might have popped up in the chat, Daniela.
Cool. Thank you for the presentation, Desiree. There actually have been a couple of questions. The first one is from Anonymous, actually. They ask if it will also be possible to collect peer feedback via Personio.
Absolutely. So this idea is to set up this automated cycle with the manager review and the employee review. And then once we have this set up is to add additional review types. So the next two big ones that will be up are the upward review. So an employee rather giving feedback to a supervisor, as well as the peer review. There is two ways to consider doing peer review. One is inside of a cycle. And then there's what we call like instant feedback, which is kind of this ongoing continuous feedback. That's probably not going to happen until next year, but the peer feedback is going to happen end of this year, beginning of next year. Will be in the review cycle.
Cool. Awesome. Then we do have another question. This one is from Sophie regarding your presentation. So Sophie asks, when Alison is able to add a self-reflection, does that mean she needs edit rights for this section and therefore is able to delete all other reviews as well, theoretically?
Great question. And yes, it does mean that she needs to have edit access. However, one of the things I think I might have alluded to is that we did want to protect this and empower managers and employees to have control of their own cycles or their own forms here. And so Alison can go in and she can create a goal, or she can create a form, and she can edit that form and she can delete that form, but she can't do that to anyone else's. So she can't go into a manager, she can't go into previous forms that have been created by HR or something like that, or delete or modify anyone else's forms.
Okay.
And the same goes for goals. I did show that, that giving that edit permission. So if the person that creates a goal doesn't want anyone else to edit it, they can choose that option, and Alison wouldn't be able to change any information there, just view it.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, that makes sense. We do have another question from Yvonne this time. Mm-hmm. So Yvonne just wants to make sure, can admins see the notes? Because Yvonne has two employees who are also Personio admins, and will they see everything? She just wants to make sure that if she puts notes on other employees who are also admins, whether or not they can see it as well.
Great question. And yes, admins can see this. Anyone that has view access to the profile can see this. However, an employee can never see their own. So even if that employee was to impersonate another admin, impersonate Yvonne in this case, and then try to go see their own notes, it's impossible. So it is like if, the use case here is if you're an admin and, there's been a change in supervisor and maybe the supervisor left some notes that aren't very relevant anymore, you can go and you can delete those.
Yep.
But you can never see your own notes on your profile.
Cool. Regardless if you're an admin or not.
Regardless.
I'm just going to check the chat if we got any new questions regarding to this. Yes, we do have another one. Is it possible to create a known personalized performance feedback form and structure? Also, is it possible to create a question based on ratings, for example, scale?
Mm-hmm. As an admin, you can set these up. So you can set these up in the employee profile, and then you can customize it with any kind of scale that you want. So we have, 1 or 2 to 5 point scale. So if you want a 3 or a 4 or a 5, it's completely up to you. What's not possible, and I don't know if this was kind of the question, is if managers or employees could go in and just create their own forms. That's not possible right now. Just admins.
Cool. Makes sense. And then, cool. Then we do have another question from Mo. Actually, how customizable is the setup? Because they would like to have a 9-box matrix and would like to populate the results based on cross feedback between performance and competencies. Not sure if, yeah.
Yeah. So this is like the 9-box grid is a reporting function that we're looking to add. But that does require a few different things. You pointed out one of them, which is competencies, which is one of the missions that we want the second team to get behind and start building this idea of a competency modeling. And the second is just having this reporting functionality. So it is on the roadmap to build something like this. It's probably isn't going to happen until 2022, next year, once we get these pieces of competency modeling and reporting into place. But it is definitely on our roadmap. I think before that, if you wanted to enable that sooner, what we will be doing is being able to export. So we'll be able to get this data out of Personio and into whatever format makes sense for you. So you can do that in your own space in a short-term measure. But long-term, this will be included in the product.
Cool. Thank you so much. I'm getting actually plenty of questions. There's another one by Christine. Is it possible to export the performance form data if needing to work the data off the system for payment and rewards?
So the performance form data, not yet. Not yet. If you're talking about having this data in terms of like the goals and the targets and the key results, that's going to be introduced into custom reports in Q3, so next quarter, or this quarter, I guess, starting now. So that'll be available in custom reports, which you'll then be able to export. In terms of the form data that might happen, this will be more towards the end of this year, the beginning of next year. We still need to do our capacity planning and understanding what Q4 looks like for us in final terms, but not immediately. No, not from the form data, but the goals data will be available.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. Thibaut is asking, as admins, can we now extract data in Excel to analyze, for example, who are the good performers and who are the bad performers, quote unquote?
Yeah, and I think this is kind of on the same route. So like from a perspective of reporting, it's going to be the first thing that we're going to be doing is this custom reports for targets. Then we build this cycle builder, and we want to make sure that cycle data of who has open reviews, closed reviews is visible in the UI and then also exportable. So that'll be kind of the next piece on the reporting roadmap. And then after that, it'll be exporting the form data. So whatever you need to do in order to like set that up in your own like CSV file or whatever that is. And then after that, then we start moving that reporting into Personio. So you can start playing with that data on a 9-box grid, or even just being able to compare and look at different reviews inside of a given cycle. So that's kind of the roadmap for reporting. We do realize, especially for larger companies, this is incredibly important. And that roadmap will get a lot more firm coming into the next year.
Cool. Thank you so much. Just to double check, Hannah, since you have the time under control, do we still have time for another 2-3 questions that are in the chat, or?
Yeah, let's maybe go for another last question and then we jump on to the next next
Sure.
section.
Cool. I see one with an upvote actually, so I'm just going to go for that one. Is there any future update where you can make the rating greater than 5 for performance reviewing? Because they have a rating scale from like 0 to 10, and currently it's from a 1 to 5 scale. So they were just
and I think it's a great thing to reach out and get that into the community. We are doing some discovery around this right now to really understand, what is the scope of this rating and how far we need to go. The decision to go for 5 was one. This is like one that we'd seen a lot from different kinds of places, and when we talked to our existing customers, this came up quite a lot as being kind of the maxed out. But also we do need to like change the scale if we start going into these larger numbers, because as you can see, like a UI that's like this long with individual kinds of labels for each of them, it gets quite untenable. So like reach out to the community, let us know, like, is this like a numerical thing? Are you expecting, like, what exactly are you expecting from this scale, so that we can take that into our discovery and make some improvements there.
Cool. Thank you so much, Desiree, for answering these questions and presenting. There's a lot of cool stuff to come, definitely.
Yes. Oh, thank you very much, Daniele. Sorry. And thank you, everybody, for letting me take some of your time and sending it. Please reach out. I'm always happy to talk to customers. Take care.